quarantine dream. This is kinda extreme. Wanna take one for the team, but I'm not sure what team I'm on. Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Angela Callender, the host of the Corona Connections Worldwide podcast, the podcast where I check in with my friends in various international locations to see how the global pandemic has affected them. We are traveling virtually to Spain today, where I have two friends. The first, Fernando, is basically a childhood friend. He was in middle school with my slightly younger brother when we were all studying at an international school in the Netherlands together. The second is Borja. He is a friend of mine that I made here in New Orleans. We met on Tinder around the holidays last year and hung out a bit in the spring before the pandemic struck, and he actually relocated back to Valencia, where his family lives, in June of this year. Fernando is joining us from Alicante, but is primarily based in Madrid. I realized I didn't do a great job of establishing who I am or why I might have these international friends in the first episode of the podcast, which probably doesn't matter in real time, since if you're checking in at this point, it's probably because you know me and already know this history. But on the off chance we get some strangers through here at some point, the basic background is that I grew up in a military family from 1999 to 2002. My family lived in the Netherlands, where, as I mentioned, I attended an international school, and I still have some friends from that period of my life. We relocated to Virginia in 2002, and that's where my family still lives, and that's where I claim to be from. But in January 2018, I moved to New Orleans, and if you're joining us from YouTube, you can see that I am quote-unquote broadcasting from Bayou St. John. If you're not joining from YouTube, this is a reminder that I'm very nerdily using some of the photos that I took around New Orleans in the early part of the pandemic as my Zoom backgrounds. So there's a funny little sign to the side of me that says hibernators in area, which some local hooligans created from the signs that are normally there that say alligators in area, which I always thought was sort of a empty threat. But indeed, when my parents were visiting a few weeks ago, we were kayaking on a nearby area of the bayou, but sure enough, we did see a gator in the bayou, so those signs are correct. Anyway, back to my personal history. In addition to the little stint in the Netherlands, I also spent some time teaching English after college, first in China, then in Thailand. So I have some friends from those years as well that hopefully will take us to that area of the world at a later point in the podcast. But I guess that's getting a little ahead of ourselves for the time being. Vamos a España. Psych! So I had this episode all edited and ready to go, and I got an update from one of the guests, Borja. We had originally recorded our interview on October 6th, and both guys do admit that they are in the second wave, that case counts have increased in recent days. Madrid had recently been put back on lockdown at the time of our conversation, but as of this week, and it is now October 23rd, Spain became the first country in Europe to reach 1 million COVID-19 cases, followed shortly thereafter by France. And now it sounds like countrywide they are talking about stricter rules that are not quite in place but are expected to be implemented soon. Curfews going from 11 p.m. until 6 in the morning, it sounds like. Other lockdown measures. Borja mentioned that they're even talking about holiday restrictions already at this point, like for Christmas gatherings, limiting those to 6 people is something that he mentioned. So it just felt like a bit of a wake-up call, honestly. Here in the States, we are getting reports of state by state, different areas reporting new record high case counts and everything. So I guess, as always, just not getting used to anything as we're experiencing it now. This isn't over, and we're getting reminders of that every day, it seems. So let me introduce you both quickly. First, we have Fernando, who is an old family friend. We've probably known each other for, I was just thinking about it, probably close to 20 years, because he was in middle school with my brother when we were studying in the Netherlands. Fernando's father was in the Spanish military, and my father was in the United States military. And we all went to international school in the Netherlands together. And in the summer of 2007, my family visited Spain and stayed. Well, I don't think we stayed with your family in Valencia, but you were a wonderful host to us. And then you visited my family in the United States, I think, the next summer, which was a pretty fun and funny experience in itself. And Borja is a friend of mine from here in New Orleans. We met on Tinder. And he has recently moved back to Spain, so he got to spend part of his experience here in the United States and part of it in Spain. So I thought that would be an interesting perspective because he can compare the two. Fernando is in Alicante now, which I am doing a better job than I did on the last episode of my podcast where my friend was in El Salvador and I didn't know exactly which body of water it bordered. So I actually looked up Alicante on a map this time and I see that you are both on the Mediterranean coast. I'm guessing only a couple hours from one another. So I guess I can start with Fernando because you were actually in Spain at the beginning of the pandemic. Well, actually, Fernando, why don't you tell us like what your kind of day-to-day life in Alicante looked like before the pandemic, assuming that's where you were.
So when I first heard about the virus, I was actually in Japan.
Oh, well, okay.
Because of I work for a consulting firm, and I usually travel around 6 months a year around the world. And yeah, it was quite curious in January that people were getting a bit scared and wearing masks. But I honestly took it a bit of as a joke, like another bird flu and things like that. I was pretty sure it wouldn't get anywhere. Then I remember going to the US, to Allentown, and people joking around it, like, "Oh, are you sure you're not bringing the virus?" I was like, "No, not at all. I didn't have any symptoms."
Sorry, that was that Allentown in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's it.
When were you there?
So I was there around early February.
Okay.
Just after Japan. And then I did another route around, it was Riyadh and Moscow. And then I flew back to Madrid. And the day after, they shut down Moscow. I would have had to do quarantine if I had stayed a day longer.
Wow.
So it was a lot of, so then I eventually got the virus, but I cannot say when I got it or where. But
and you know that because you've tested positive for antibodies?
Yeah, I got tested. I had the long-term antibodies, the IgGs.
Okay.
So, but also around the 10th of March, I had already been in Madrid for like 2 weeks. So I think I got it there. And then I just woke up feeling feverish, not too bad, just like a common flu. And I just actually went to work because we didn't know much about the virus back then.
Yeah.
But I had all the symptoms. And then the day after, they told us to not go to office again. And I had those feverish symptoms for like 11 days. It was maybe 1 degree of fever, a bit of just general not well-being, and I lost my sense of smell for like a month.
For a whole month? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So that seems like that's probably when you had it then.
Yeah, that's... So
and
most likely...
Go ahead.
No, so yeah, most likely I got it actually in Madrid around the 8th of March. That was actually like a lot of people got it around those dates because there was still those days that nothing was closed out. So there was a lot of social interactions. And I have a lot of friends who had dinner with me that day and everyone had it. Okay. So that's probably where it came from.
And when did Spain actually start shutting down?
I think that was around the 20th of March.
Okay, was it that late? Because we started shutting down the 16th of March. That was a Monday, and that was when everything. And I was under the impression Spain was kind of ahead of us.
Well, I think that, I was in Madrid, which was probably like the worst point of Spain. Also because it's the most dense area. Yeah, there was a lot of controversy because the 8th of March there was like a big feminist manifestation, and then it was the more liberals, they wanted to shut it down because of the virus. The government wanted to have it, so there was a bit of a political discussion whether to shut it down or wait a few more days. But all in all, it was around the 20th when things got shut down for like a month or 2 months. Actually, we were at home 2 months.
Okay, and can you describe that experience a little bit? Because I don't we've had various degrees of lockdown here, but I don't think we've had really anything quite as strict as I understand things were to be in Spain and Italy.
So my experience was actually very positive.
Okay.
Because so I was locked down at my home in Madrid for 2 full months. So the whole of April, May, and actually June, I had partial restrictions. But I remember 2 months where you could barely only go to get groceries. But I think it really depends on the kind of place you lived in. I had recently moved to a new apartment, which was a lot bigger, had a terrace. So I had a lot more space and I was fine. But I had other friends that did not have a garden or anything like that. And if you're locked down in a small apartment with not much light, then the situation can be quite tricky. You're there for quite long.
Yeah. And sorry, you were in Alicante or you were in Madrid at that point?
No, I was in Madrid.
Okay. And
I'm just here. I'm working remotely now because they locked us down again.
Oh.
So that's why I left before they locked us down on Friday.
Gotcha. And Borja, did your family in Valencia have similar experiences to that? Was it about a 2-month lockdown there as well, from what you understand?
Yeah. My parents couldn't go out unless, going to the pharmacy or to the grocery store. And I mean, it was hard for them, especially if you have my grandma who's 88 and she lived by herself. So they were like, I don't want to go. I have to go check with her, but also I'm afraid to go and see her because, she's at that age.
Yeah.
And also it was hard for like my brother who just has a baby, a 1-year-old baby, and he couldn't go out of the house. And I mean, a baby needs to go to the park, needs to play, and it was hard for them to have it in a small apartment, like 2 months.
Yeah. Did your family ever consider having your grandmother quarantine like with one of your parents or something? Or did they not even really have time to make those decisions?
No, because she's old, and when people get old, they get stubborn, so they don't want to move from their house. And it was like, I'm good, I'm fine, and they will call her all the time, and they live like I don't know, they live really close to each other, like 2 minutes away drive, so it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, it's a scary situation to like don't go out, and they were bringing food to her because they really didn't want her to go out at all.
Yeah. Do you know if there were programs around the city that helped that? Like I was volunteering with a program here that delivered food to elderly people who weren't able to go out. Do you know of any programs like that were around?
I got no idea. I mean, I live near Valencia in a small town, and people help each other, and your neighborhood. So they kind of think you see a lot of movement in Spain about people helping each other or people in balconies doing things to get entertained, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Fernando, did you see any of the like balcony singing or any of that? Was that part of your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I live in Madrid in front of like the opposition party. So in that region, most people were actually more complaining against the government. So there was around 8 o'clock, people were clapping for the doctors. And then they started just knocking and jamming on different kind of pots at home to complain against the government. So we had that every day for like a month.
And how did you, so if they were clapping, you knew that was for the healthcare workers, but if they were banging on pots, you assumed it was in protest?
Yeah, but it was a different time. It was always like 1 hour later. So you could clearly differentiate it.
That's kind of funny. And in general, were people upset about the lockdown, or did they think it was a necessary precaution? And I realize you can't speak for everybody, but what was the general impression that you got from people about that?
I think it really varies. Like some people completely support it, and others thought it was kind of like a waste of time and kind of leading us to a huge economic crisis beyond the sanitary crisis. So I really don't think there's a consensus here.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case here too. And as far as did it feel really present and in your face? Like I know that there were pictures from the hospitals that were overburdened with people. Like, um, did you or people you know a lot of people who were catching it and getting really sick, or did it feel kind of distant from you in that way?
I have a bit of both stories. So my kind of cousin sister, who's very close to me, she's a doctor. So I usually hang out with her and all her friends who are all doctors around the hospitals. So they were kind of in the WhatsApp groups talking about it, or like what they've seen and so on. I mean, they're generally complaining, but I would say that it's normal for people to complain about the job, that they're very busy. But I didn't see them putting like that many extra hours. It's
Okay.
more that it was like very busy on a daily basis and probably higher than other years with a peak of flu. So yeah, I would say the hospitals, for what I saw nearby, they were pretty packed and close to being full. Then on the news, they were saying that the elderly people in the residences, they were just not taking them to the hospitals, not to over collapse them. So, and that explained a lot of the high death rate for the elderly people. And then nobody close to me really suffered any bad symptoms. And I realized that a lot of people around me had a pure contact with the flu or were positive. And then, like I remember for the first weeks that the numbers of people dying were just not transparent. And for me, the biggest alarm was when like the mayor of one of the little towns in Spain, Soria, which is like where a lot of retired people live, actually said that this year they had 3 times the amount of dead people than last year in March. So that was like, wow, so something is really happening.
Yeah.
So I think that the official numbers of people dying, they're being published in the like national statistics. And what I've seen in some YouTube videos is that overall, not that many more people have died more than last year. However, there might be some serious side effects for the coming years. So people having resulting injuries that will damage their health over time. So it's still very hard to assess the real damage, in my view.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I guess to go back to lockdown, because we were never confined to our homes in the same way that it sounds like you were, and it's not, in a place like New York or something. Um, so you truly never left the house except for groceries, for the most part. Is that correct? And what kind of enforcement was there for that behavior?
I mean, there was a lot of police on the street. So you would almost always get asked, especially if you were not wearing like, if you have a bag from some grocery store, then that'll be fine. So you should always come up with an excuse. that was, and I think a lot of people did that. They just get like a groceries bag and then walked around for like an hour. So, like I was gonna say, like another trick. I know some people that still had like reunions and like small house parties, and then they would usually go buy something, like buy ice or whatever, and then take it to the other person's home, and then nobody could really track if you're going to your home or somewhere else's. So those were the kind of tricks.
And Borja, when you moved back, when exactly was that, and what was the state of the quarantine there?
It was the 24th of June, and I think it was like just like a week where they pretty much you could go to bars, you could go to other states, you could travel. I mean, there were some restrictions about people, spaces, and keeping the distance, wearing the mask, and so. But I think it was right when the curve flattened and was decreasing, and before the second wave. So, I mean, I took the plane, and when I came to Madrid to the airport, they give me a paper like, did you have any symptoms? Did you been in contact with somebody with the COVID and stuff like that? But I didn't. Nobody checked me the temperature or say anything to me. And I mean, I felt like people felt it was pretty much done in summer because of the of the hot temperature. It was going to kill the virus or something, and not at all.
Was there anything that made you choose that time frame, either your own judgment or any rules that were in place that you decided to go in late June, or like would you have gone earlier if you could have?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about going actually after that, making a big trip through Alaska in the States a little bit before coming back. But since traveling was kind of restricted and some like many national parks and stuff were closed in the US, and I'm like, it's time to go back. And also, it was really hard to go back before. I also tried to when I decided that it was not worth to travel to the States in this situation. I'm like, okay, yeah, then I should go back. But flight tickets were being canceled, and you had to call and the customer service, and it was really hard and to try to get back. I think I got like 3-4 flights canceled before I finally. I mean, it felt like I got to the peak of the Everest mountain. It's like finally I got back home. It was being really hard. So yeah, I mean, it definitely changed my plans. And at some point, you don't know if it's better to stay in the States or like go back. But I mean, I have made up my mind. So I'm like, okay, this is the time.
And did you notice anything? What big differences did you notice really between what your experience had been like here versus there?
I mean, we are in the second wave, and it depends also in every. We don't call it the states; we call it communities. For example, in Madrid now, if in the city in Madrid, you can only be in your neighborhood, and if you go out of your neighborhood, it's because of work. And I mean, they still deciding if they are gonna ticket people or how they're gonna. But they are warning people that you don't go out of your neighborhood, and people is fleeing from Madrid before they are restricted and they have to be at home. And bars, I mean, it's depending on the state, on the community, it's up to maybe 6 people or 10 people, but no more than that. No parties, no weddings, no concerts, no soccer, no major sport events at all. And I mean, that wasn't happening during the summer either, but it I feel people got more concerned about the second wave, about wearing the mask and putting some hand sanitizer, and the schools really kind of got prepared before this school year started.
Because you're teaching now, right?
Yeah.
And what's that like? Is it in person, or are you doing virtual or hybrid school, or what's that like there?
So I mean, in our level, in elementary, pre-K, and high school level, it's in school. Like it's not hybrid or it's not online. It's like people go to school, but you have to keep the distance between people, like 6 feet distance, all the time wearing a mask. From first grade up to 12th grade, they have to wear a mask. And there are some groups they are called like bubble groups, that group only they can share things and play between them. And there is the non-bubble groups, which is mostly the other groups, where they have to be 6 feet apart all the time and don't share any material and don't move from the table. When you go to recess, like you should not like play any game that can, like, don't tag other kids or don't play soccer and use the same ball and stuff like that.
Right. What grade are you teaching?
I'm teaching third and fourth. I'm in a very small school. I'm working in a rural school, so I got the three and fourth aggruppated. And I gotta say, the kids are really, really. Uh, I'm surprised with the kids. They wear the mask. They don't complain. They put the hand sanitizer. They mostly keep the distance, and I mean, they are really aware of the situation. that's really impressive.
Yeah, I've often said that like kids are way more adaptable than adults are, and I think that they can adapt to those kind of changes more easily. And again, the long-term effects of it. I always think of the smallest children who are just learning to like speak and everything, and how weird it must be that they don't see adults' mouths moving all the time when they're out and about. And I wonder how that affects like speech acquisition and that kind of thing. But as far as them being able to adapt to the new rules and everything, kids are a little bit better at that. Um, Fernando, since you were in Spain for both the first and second waves, did you, has there been much of a difference that you've noticed between the way that either the government or the population has been handling the situation in those cases?
Yeah, I mean, some of the difference is that in the first wave, we didn't have any masks. So we were not forced to wear them.
Okay.
That's actually came to my attention. And I think people now are, I mean, they're less scared. That's my feeling, because at the beginning, there was a lot of uncertainty about what was really going to happen. I think people are just like now following the restrictions, but like less scared. That's kind of my view. However, it's true that even though, like, for example, Madrid is now in lockdown again, you can still move around your neighborhood, and the restaurants are still open, and life feels a bit more normal. Like the gyms, I believe they're open as well. That during the hard times of the restriction, you had just staying at home, which is super. It was much of a harder times.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel so bad anymore. Also, I think that we're kind of more used to it.
Yeah.
So it feels like the new normal. So
yeah.
it's not a big shift anymore.
And so you're saying that you can't, under the new restrictions, you can't go outside of Madrid, like you can only travel within, or did I misunderstand that?
No, that's correct. So I mean, they have been evolving the restrictions. First, it was a few neighborhoods of Madrid that you were not allowed to leave out of them, only for work. But now they have a new Spain-based rule that for every city, if you reach certain thresholds of amount of cases per inhabitant, or the hospitals reach 35% occupancy, then automatically that city gets shut down. So the city of Madrid itself got shut down, not the whole community or anything. So basically, 9 more cities got shut down within the Madrid area. So you just have to stay within them. But I didn't get to experience that because I left on Friday before that took place.
Okay. So that happened within the past week?
Yeah, that was on Friday evening. So on Wednesday, the government said it, and they had 48 hours. And then Friday night at 10 o'clock, it became real. And a lot of people have done that. They have just left their second homes and their little towns. So in a way, you can feel in a lot of places, like smaller cities, that they have much more life, because people have like left the big city to there. Yeah. That's a small positive effect.
No, I think that's happening here a little bit. I get one thing, and I shouldn't say that I'm surprised, because I think for one, it would be hard to enforce, and for two, there hasn't been a lot of strict rules being placed on the national level. But I have thought it was interesting that it's been so easy to travel from place to place within the United States, with the exception of flights being canceled and that sort of thing. But if you're traveling by road, you can really do whatever you want. And even with the flights, any quarantine is just on the person themselves to.
I mean, with the quarantine, I've seen cases that it really depends who is the person in charge of you. Like if someone spots you that you've been in contact with a positive, then you might actually get the quarantine enforced to you. Otherwise, it's up to you to do it. And there depends who you hang out with. There's a lot of social pressure. So sometimes your friends, if they know that you should be in quarantine, they will be on top of you for you to do it. So like if you publish something on Instagram or something like that, you won't get a lot of positive feedback.
And Borja, you said that you had a mini wedding of sorts over the past weekend. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. I was supposed to go to a wedding the last Sunday, but it got canceled. And also my cousin was getting married in, I think it was like in 10 days, and she canceled too. The thing is that in weddings now it's like 10 people top on on a table, and people cannot move around. You have to be wearing the mask all the time. There is no open bar, which is, I mean, the reason most people go to weddings, I guess. In Spain, at least, like there's always an open bar, so it's weird not to have an open bar. And people cannot dance also, so it's like, what's the point to do a wedding if you cannot do, like, I mean,
You can't drink, you can't dance.
and then, I mean, just go to the courthouse and sign the papers, But no, it's like if you want to do a wedding, you should wait. And people is canceling that. People is also. I got a case of. So I'm working in a 600 people or 600 population town, and they were celebrating the communion. It's a small Catholic community, and the kids who they came for the first time the body of God. I don't know how you say it.
The first communion.
The first communion.
Mm-hmm.
And the priest got the virus, and he did a first communion for a kid, and he did a big mass for the town, and he also did they were burying somebody, and he was giving the blessing and stuff like that. So I got people in the school where I'm working that got checked for the coronavirus, and it was a huge thing around the town and around the area but not many people went to the first communions. It was like just the close family, because you cannot do big events anymore. But I mean, for that reason, kids do it always when they are like 9 years old or 10. So they didn't want to postpone that, but weddings are getting postponed and other things like that.
And as far as you know, the first communion didn't turn into like a quote unquote super spreader event or anything like that. It was just something. Wait, so are you saying that they knew he had tested positive and they still let him do the first communion, or they only found out afterwards?
The funny thing is that he started feeling bad like Saturday, something like that. I mean, this is all like gossip about the town, which it was really interesting, because it's this kind of town that nothing happens ever, but when something like that happens, it's like so much gossiping. And he was feeling bad Saturday, and he did the first communion Sunday anyway. And then he got tested on Monday. He got we call it the PCR, the kind of test they do. I don't know if it's the same.
The only
but
names...
It's the one that they put you through the nose.
Okay, that's the only one that I even really know of.
And so he got tested on Monday, but on Tuesday he did a big mass, and Wednesday I think he was burying somebody who died from something else. But I mean, even though when you take the test, you have to be quarantined. You have to be confined at home for 14 days. At least that was before. Now they are saying 10 days. But he didn't do that. So I mean, that was a huge kind of a scandal. In a small town scale, but it was huge.
Yeah, no, I think that would, I mean, I guess in a way, luckily it's just a small town. I can only imagine the same thing happening at like a huge community where there's 600 people in the church itself, and then people might be a little more nervous.
But luckily, I mean, churches have like high ceiling, and I think ventilation is really important. I think most people is getting the virus is getting spread when people is going to bars, like they're inside the bar, and you take the mask out to eat, and you're really close to each other, and that's the worst case. I don't think like other cases are not that bad, and as long as you're wearing the mask and using hand sanitizer, I mean the virus is still there, and you can catch it or spread it. But I think bars with no good ventilation is like the hot spots.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And you had done some traveling. Was it just around Spain or around other parts of Europe after you got back?
I've been to Spain, and I've been also a little bit I've been to Andorra, and I was to France too, a little bit, to the south part of France.
But you feel so strongly about France.
Yeah. I mean, my friends wanted to go to France, and I got to experience a little bit about France. they don't have to wear mask. So for us was like really shocking, and they are not as concerned or as afraid of the virus as we Spaniards, or I mean, I can say by my point of experience, like we are. Like I saw many touristic places in France, like Carcassonne, which is a really nice like castle city, like really middle age, and people with no mask, no distance. I mean, I got really overwhelmed of the situation. Like I don't want to see this. I'm gonna take a drink, wait, and then go because it was too much people. Yeah, too crowded.
That's something that's been a little bit funny for me. Like, if you are used to masking up and you are used to stricter regulations, like, I've been almost surprised at how quickly my own brain has changed. And when I even watch, like, TV and they're like close together in a bar, people are like talking like right on each other. Like, it's, I don't know, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I'm like, oh, like, why are you all so close to each other? Why are you talking on each other? And in my Uber driving, I've noticed a little bit of the same, like, most locals seem to be very good with masks, and that's what they're used to. And tourists, for the most part, when they come, they understand that that's the rule. And even if they don't agree with it, they're pretty good about complying. But you can tell some people come to New Orleans and are not really prepared for how closed things still are. And they're like, what are you guys doing down here? And then I'll drive around New Orleanians, like this guy who was in Vegas recently, and he's like, you wouldn't believe it there. Like, this guy was just next to me in the bar, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, I think it's just really interesting how quickly people's standards and understanding of normalcy seem to change. And if you do get used to the masking up routine and keeping distance, it becomes very uncomfortable when you don't see people abiding by those rules.
Yeah. For me, it's when I see like a film or like a concert, and you see all that people dancing and hugging, and I'm like, and I also kind of thinking like I see those images or and I'm thinking, when is this gonna happen again, or is this ever gonna happen? Like, or is this new normal here to stay for good? Or I mean, it's like, I was in Mardi Gras there, and I like crowds, I like big concerts too, and it's like, but now I don't know if I want to go there or if they are ever gonna happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I think life is very long, and as long as this experience has felt already, it hasn't even been a year. And I think as quickly as we have adjusted to this new normal, if there's a trustworthy vaccine that becomes widely available and people use, like, I think we can snap back. I think that is probably something that will happen. But I guess it's just made you think about sanitation and germs and stuff in general, and also like, for me, swine flu was in 2009, and it was, so what's the next one going to be like? Is it going to be really contagious and really killing people? Like, it seems like this isn't the last coronavirus we're going to be dealing with. And I don't know, maybe the more proactive we can be about just keeping cleaner spaces, the better we'll be. I don't know. Fernando, have you also done any traveling in other parts of Europe since all of this, that you've noticed differences at all, or have you been mostly within Spain?
No, I've been traveling a lot around Spain, like in the northern rural areas to see my family, and kind of in the Balearic Islands. Like there was a place called Formentera, which was a very, very popular hotspot, and that remained 100% full, and people tend to be more relaxed. However,
so you're saying, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying it was a hot spot. It presumably got locked down at the beginning, but now it's back to being open, and people are kind of being like every day, or like
no, it was one of the first places to come out of the lockdown, because it's like a small island. But then it's like very, very touristy. It's like similar. I think it's the most touristy place in Spain. Like similar.
What's it called again?
Formentera. It's next to Ibiza.
Okay.
So there, for example, it's mainly young people, and you could see that people were much more relaxed. with the restrictions there. However, I did hear back from a lot of friends who were there that actually turned positive afterwards. So there was a small outbreak during the summer.
Mm. Got it.
But in other places of Spain, it was kind of the same vibe everywhere. People were quite scared. I mean, I did get the feeling that people from Madrid were more used to it because they had been longer with it, more exposed. Whereas in the other places, they were just getting to know it like 1 or 2 months afterwards and still scared or much more concerned about it. But it was the same thing, just with some months of delay.
Sure. Have you noticed, like, the way that I feel like it played out in the United States is that the first couple cities, like New Orleans and like New York, got hit hard first, and those places were forced to take it very seriously. And then in other places, maybe they looked at what was happening in the hot spots and knew to take it seriously. But like, I've tried to be a little bit understanding of people in rural areas who just didn't have the same firsthand experience, and so were a little more likely to be incredulous of it. And of course, that was helped along by our government that was treating it like a hoax for so long. But it sounds like even in the rural areas, even if they're a little bit delayed, it's still taken a little more seriously there. Is that the case?
Yeah. I think within time, everyone got to the same level.
Right.
It's just that I have the feeling that population density is a big role.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
Like, so in the rural areas, you have like your own home with garden, and you have plenty of space, and you don't need to get close to anybody for days, right? Whereas in a small city, you can't really stop it.
Mm-hmm. And what has your testing availability been like? Like Louisiana, for how much money we seem to not have for anything ever. We had one of the best testing programs in the whole country, and still now tests are available for free, no insurance. You don't even have to be a resident of the state. Like, I took my friend's mom who was here from Boston, and they're just widely available, and people can get them. But that's not the antibody test. Like, I know very few people who've actually taken the antibody test. I would like to take one myself just to know, because I feel like between my Uber driving and going to protests, and I felt a little bit sick in early February, more than I normally do, and broke down and got medicine, which is something that I don't normally do. And so it sounds like you have maybe more widely available antibody tests than we do. But what is the ordinary testing availability?
So I think that it has changed a lot since the first weeks and months. So at the beginning, I think it was only like in the private sector that you could get them. And I got my first test, I only test in June, and I just had to pay it privately. And it was like 150 euros. It was the one with where you test your finger, and then you get the antibody. I mean, just to put it in perspective.
So it's like a blood test for the antibodies.
It's a small it's a blood test on your finger, and you get it within minutes. But we're used to having like either public healthcare or everyone has insurance, either or. So we're not used to paying anything at the hospital. So it's actually quite a big shock when you have to pay 150 euros.
Yeah.
Maybe for the scale of the US, it doesn't feel like much, but here it hurts, right?
No, well, and I think it's funny. It's almost like we've switched, and like, this is the most socialized our medicine has ever been, almost. It's like even under like the least socialist president who's like doing all sorts of fascist stuff all the time, like suddenly we have this one like randomly like cool socialized part of our medicine that we have free testing available in some places.
But here, I believe that now, if you're close by to someone who's positive, then your general practitioner can recommend the test, and that's covered by the insurance. So it's also free. If the doctor asks you for it. If you want to do it by yourself, then I think you have to pay kind of that in that range of price. And then many companies are also doing it to their employees. So it's pretty available, I would say now. If you want to get tested, you shouldn't have an issue.
Gotcha. Do you feel the same way, Borja, or is it more available for teachers or anything like that?
Yeah, well, the thing is that, they were doing tests for everybody who got close to somebody with the virus. And I have a friend working in Madrid as a teacher, and she got tested because her school got locked down. But they are in some areas are not testing as much, like because they are running out of tests too, especially like big big cities like Madrid. They did out of testing, and now they are like kind of thinking about if they are doing too much testing. Like I also had a couple of kids last week who got fever and were coughing and like they got kind of the symptoms, but they went to the hospital and they got checked and they say, oh, you have a cold, so we're not making you the test. So I guess what they're trying to do is, if you have been in contact with somebody, they will do the test, and but they will ask you how contact you've been, like if you've been without the mask, if you've been really close for at least 15 minutes, something like that. But if you have symptoms like fever but you haven't been in contact with somebody, they are kind of thinking of taking the test with kids at least, because they know kids. I mean, it's about to start flu season again, and they are like, we cannot take we cannot take so much testing with the COVID. We're gonna run out. So they are thinking and checking if it's something else before they do the test.
Right. Got it. I think y'all have given me so much good information. And then the last thing that I am curious about is just what the perception of the situation in the United States has been in other places. Like, is it looked at as like this thing that we've just totally dropped the ball and bad leadership? Is it not even really on people's radar? I never tried to assume that people are just thinking about and talking about America all the time, but I have been curious as to what people in other places think about what's been happening here.
Well, I go first. For people who didn't believe, because there is I don't know, a small group, I guess. I don't know if of people who think this is all a lie or it's not as bad as a situation. Kind of, Donald Trump was kind of a hero. Like, you see, Americans, they can do everything. They are not in such a lockdown as us. I don't know how they feel now that he got the virus. But what we feel about America, it's well, we are now talking about the president who got the virus and now he's being cured, but he is or in a car without the mask, and it's like, I think most people feel like he's he's not doing what he's supposed to be if you have the virus.
Sure.
Like, that's not the way of acting it with that either. And I don't think we got much information about about like New York City or other places being locked down now. I think we did at the beginning, but now we are really talking every day about COVID, but mostly Spain and specifically Madrid, because it's been hit the hardest now with the virus.
Got it. And how about you, Fernando? Do you feel like your experience has been basically the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think as mentioned, like I live in Madrid, so it's always a bit more restricted there, and it's more people, and it's been a bit harder. So than other parts of Spain, but it's true that we don't get that much transparency in the news of what's going on in the U.S. and other parts of the world. Like the media is pretty much locally focused.
Yeah,
so,
and that's not really, especially in a situation like this, I think that's fine. Like, you probably are more concerned on what's happening in your own community and everything. But sometimes I've just felt like, oh, we must be this laughing stock of the world. And so I've just kind of wondered if that's been the case. In fact, it's really interesting to hear what Borja said about people kind of cheering President Trump for, not having such strict regulations, which I suppose also I can see how people would have that reaction as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it really depends who you ask. Like, just like in the US, I think here as well, many people are pro-Trump, and many of them would complain of Trump. So I don't think there's a consensus either.
Yeah.
And as mentioned, like here with the restrictions, some people really support it, and others are super fed up with it and think there's no point to do further things. So it's quite a tricky. I mean, you can even see it within like the local governments and the central government. It's just that here, I think we have the opposite side. So the central government is pro lockdowns, and then, for example, the Madrid government didn't want to go into the lockdown, so they're like fighting all the time, like, don't lock me in. Yes, you should. But
well, I guess that's one. I mean, this is only the second quote unquote episode I've done, but I guess that's one similarity I'm finding across the board is that there is no consensus. Nobody is really sure how to respond to what their government is asking. There's distrust from all sides, and nobody really knows the right way to proceed. So I guess we're all kind of in this together, as they say.
Yeah, that's.
It's funny because they were saying that, we will come better after this. We will be more united, and now the health is important and everything. And you see that, both or all political parties are still doing politics. Like, okay, no, I want a full lockdown. No, that's bad for the economy. No, that, health. But, oh, no, those measures really don't do nothing. So, I mean, at this point, you should be like, what's really important? How is we can reach an agreement? And they don't really care about agreements. They're still doing politics as before. So it's kind of. I think most people, either if you are on one side or the other side, people is disappointed about how governments and how politicians are acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I honestly think that it's pretty hard because it's like a very tough trade-off. It's like, do you want the risk of saving a few more lives versus destroying the economy? Nobody wants to be in that position because whatever you do, you lose, right?
Yeah.
Like if you save people but you destroy the economy, they will blame you for it. And if you actually maintaining everything open and the economy suffer, and some more people die, some people will really blame you as well. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm very happy that I haven't had to be a decision maker in any of this situation. The thing I keep talking about, so I've been pretty supportive of what cautious measures, I should say, but now my thing is that I just feel like they should find a way to let music back more than it has been, because the musicians are really suffering here, and that's such a big part of our economy and our culture and everything. And I feel like there are safe ways that you could be having musicians give performances, and that's still pretty restricted here. So that's one thing that I wish was a little bit different in this exact moment.
I mean, one anecdote that I got from my grandfather is that he had never seen this before in his 95 years of life. So that not even during the Civil War, things were stopping so much. Like even there, unless you were right in the frontier of the fights, life kind of went on.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, or people, early in the pandemic, people were saying it wasn't this bad during Katrina, which I don't know if you're familiar, Fernando, with the scope of what Hurricane Katrina meant in New Orleans, but it's the worst thing that's ever happened to New Orleans. So for people to say that this lockdown is worse than Katrina, because bars did stay open, a couple of them did, and musicians left, but they came back quickly, and that helped revive spirits and draw other people back here, and for everything to be closed and not know when it will open and not really have hope of it opening anytime soon, has really, really affected morale and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually for me, one of the most important things is what will be the long-term effects for society. Because, I mean, there will be fundamental changes in the way we live, even if this only goes longer for 6 more months or a year. But I was seeing the news, 30% of the small businesses, shops in Spain are closing. They're just bankrupt. So
wow.
That will be a big shift. Then a lot of people are going to work remotely. But if they can work remotely, I work from Alicante in Madrid, they can also do it from some other country. So there will be a lot of job losses and fundamental change in consumption patterns. So I think it's hard to predict how will that affect house prices, living conditions, the whole economy as a whole. Who knows what's coming? For me, that's the most scary part, actually, right now, more than the virus itself.
Yeah, and to know that we're really still just in the middle of it. The end isn't coming soon. We're not going to know the answer to these questions soon. So yeah, it's well, thanks guys. I feel a lot better now. But no, I really appreciate all the points you brought up. Does anyone have any final things or questions for each other or for me or anything?
No, as a funny, an anecdote that is happening in school is when after teaching for 4 or 5 days, I took the mask because I was gonna eat an apple, and kids were like, "Wow, I didn't imagine your face like that." And it's funny how kids now, like how people when you see we're meeting people now with the mask that we haven't met before, and after seeing without the mask we find the like the mouth and the shape like being totally different of what we expected, and the kids were really like, I didn't expect you to have like the face like that, and I'm like, I mean, what can I say? But
you're like, is it better than you expected or is it worse?
I don't want to know. I leave it like that. But I mean, this is funny. There is funny situation, and the new normal has some things that I mean, mostly not much silver linings though. But I mean, this situation is bringing some creativity and some fun stuff too.
It's bringing some what?
Some creativity, like you see the mask and you see how people is trying to meet each other and stuff like that, and how we got much connected, and also like I think it has brought some fun situations too. But I mean, I want back. I want to go back to the old normal.
Yeah, I got to start a podcast, so it's been great for me. Cool. Yeah, I had intended to, at the beginning of the conversation, share some like anecdotes from our pasts and stuff. And there is a story that I have with Fernando that has remained just like one of my favorite college experiences, which was when he was visiting my family. I think it was the summer of 2008. It must have been because I wasn't even 21 yet. And he came to visit my brother and me, who were both in Charlottesville in school. And we were going to the bars, and my brother wasn't even coming because he didn't have an ID, and I had my fake ID. And Fernando was like, well, I want to kind of come. So I was living with a guy at the time who was 25, and his name was Scott Olschlager. And Fernando must have been like 18 or 19, didn't look anything like this guy. Olschlager is a hard name for me to pronounce, and English is my first language. And despite Fernando's very good English, like it's a little bit of a hard name to wrap your tongue around, but we were going to try it anyway. And we go to this bar, and the bouncer like clearly knows that it is not him and tells him no, but then discovers that he's Spanish, and they start like just like going on because the bouncer was from, I think, Dominican Republic, and so they start talking to each other in Spanish and like become best friends, and before we know it, like Fernando's allowed in the bar after all. And that was a very funny experience for me. And Fernando, I don't think I would have ever like had an opportunity to tell you this, but years later, when I was living in DC, I was at a party with some friends who had gone to college with me and friends of friends. And I meet this guy who had been a bouncer at that bar, and he seemed kind of familiar. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, were you there? And I described the incident, and it happened to be the same bouncer, and he totally remembered it. He was like, that guy was awesome. So that's...
I had completely forgotten about that, but thanks for sharing it. It was some good times.
Did we try to go over the back fence?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think we jumped over it some other day.
Yeah, I think that might have been it. I think we might have been stopped going over the fence, and then we tried to go around the front, and like I guess the guy knew me and my friend and like trusted our IDs, and he's like, but wait, you were just the guy that they were trying to get over the fence. You can't go in. No. But then so that was a fun memory. I
remember it was the days when the euro was worth like $1.5 or something.
Yes.
So I was an 18-year-old, so I didn't have much savings. So I was always in the debate, so should I spend what I had on booze or go shopping in the outlets? I remember all of you always voted for booze. It's like, no, just get more shots. Forget about
but I'm pretty sure you did both, because my mom still loves to talk about how she took you to the outlets and you bought so much stuff, and like only later did she learn that your mom had like strictly instructed you to not go spend all your money on shopping or something. But like you said, your money was so valuable. I don't blame you for that whatsoever.
Yeah, so we don't have a great shopping here as we do in the US. So it's for us, it's always a great opportunity when we go.
Yeah. And not to leave you out, Borja, I have one of my favorite moments with you was when we were outside Bartonique, one of our first nights hanging out, and we had Ollie with me, and I had told you that he bites like 1 in 10 people, which is not true. Like it's way fewer than 1 in 10, but that's what I had told you. And every person who came up and like patted him and interacted with him well, you're keeping count. Like when you got to 9, you're like, all right, well you better not let him like meet anybody else because he's definitely gonna bite them. And that was always a funny bar memory that I had with you.
Yeah, I remember that day we were like, "Oh, can I pet it?" And you, yeah, go ahead. And you told me that before, and I'm like, "Ooh, we're gonna have some trouble." And when it came up to 9, I'm like, "Okay, finally we're gonna get." You know, it's like when you're watching like NASCAR, you're waiting for the accident to happen. So I was like waiting for somebody to get to get beaten, and nobody did. So I was kind of happy that Ollie knows how to behave, but I was also kind of disappointed because I didn't see, nobody got him, beaten. So
That was also a really good American reference to the NASCAR watching. You got really like Americanized while you were here.
Yeah. I'm kind of losing my Americanization, but I still keep some chunks of it.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for this. I do not know when I will have it edited and posted. I was thinking having 5 recorded before I start actually trying to publish them anywhere, but I might start with 3. So I'll definitely keep you updated. And yeah, if that's all from y'all, I will sign off.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Muchas
Thank you, Andrea.
gracias. Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for episode 2 of Corona Connections Worldwide. I forgot to say it at the beginning because I'm still new to this, but please do find us on social media at Corona Connects Pod on most platforms and at Rona Connects Pod on Twitter. And also please rate and review on iTunes if you're so inclined, and especially if you want to give a 5-star rating. I'm not trying to rush you to the rating process if you're thinking of giving something less than 5 stars, Anyway, enjoy your day or your night, depending where you are in the world. Bye!
Watching history be made.